Hey guys, it's me Jocelyn. So today I'm going to be showing you some creative transitions on Alight Motion. Now obviously you can have your own opinion on whether you think these are creative or not, but I thought they look really cool honestly. So yeah, let's just get started. So this is what the first transition is going to look like. I don't really have a name for it, it's just kind of there. So the first major step you need to do is have your photos set up like this. So have your main photo right here and then have the two photos right here. Just like this, like pretend the first one's still underneath it. So for your first photo, you're going to want to make sure that it is lined up with this photo right here so that at the end it'll end up looking like this. So just go ahead and make sure that you add on wipe. So on the first photo, you're going to want to add on wipe and make the start 25% and the end 75%. Now do the exact same for your second photo, but instead of the start being that and stuff, you're going to want your start to be 25% and then the end 25%, so it's pretty much the same for both of them. I didn't add on any feather to these yet. We do that later in the step. So make sure once your photos are both like layered, add on wipe and make the start 75% and the end, make the start 25% and the end 75%. Make sure your angle is at 0. Now what I did is I held down this side right here and then I grouped the photos together just like this. And then within that group, what I did is I added on wipe once again, and I made the angle 90. And for the first photo, I keyframed end from 0 to 100%. And then on the second photo, make sure you add on wipe, I keyframed start from 100 to 0. I did negative 1.0, but it doesn't really matter. As long as it's below 0, it's fine. And this is where I feathered my photos. Now feathering is just basically making the edges soft. This is completely optional. I just really like the look of it. I'm not a fan of super straight edges. I don't know what it is. But yeah, so I just feathered them like this. So you're going to want to have it end up looking like this. Do any graph you prefer. This personally is the graph that I use. It's just like a really basic out graph. Then I grouped those two photos together as well. And I did a zoom in transition. Now, the only reason I'm not physically doing it is because it's going to be so laggy, my screen recording will stop. So I just did a simple zoom in transition for this like grouped. And then if you're wondering how I got it to rotate, I went on to my spin panel. I added one keyframe at the very beginning, one keyframe at about the middle of the transition, made that -5, and then I went to the end of the transition and I made it 0 again. Now for this cool glitchy effect underneath, what I did, you're going to need Pro to do this effect, but if you want to do any other effect like pixelate, honestly is cool too, you could do that. I added on Omnio diffusion, and I didn't really mess with the settings a ton. I just made up, so the first keyframe, I just keyframed them. So I made the alpha 0% at the beginning, and then I raised it up to 100% to the full percent at the end. And yeah, that was it for this first transition. Make sure to add on motion blur so it looks really cool, and yeah. Now this next transition, it's basically a PNG kind of pop-in, and they come in from the side looking like this. So first thing you need to do is have two PNGs. The way you can get those is you can either cut out the background yourself on PixArt or something, or you can go to removebackground.com, which is what I used, because it perfectly masks your photos. Then what I did is I set them up like this. I had the bottom layer and then my two PNGs on top. And I added on flip to both of them. So for the first one, I added on flip. For the first keyframe, I made the angle 133, and then I ended it with just 0%. And this is the graph that I did for that. I also slid it in from the side a little bit, so you could do a slide in as well. That's my favorite part of it, because it kind of makes it look like it's coming in from a curved kind of angle. And then I just did the exact same thing on the other side. I even did the exact same settings for the flip. I just slid it in from the opposite way. And it'll end up looking like this. And then what I did for the bottom photo right here, since I don't want to leave it super plain, I just added on inner blur. And right as the first PNG started coming in, I added a keyframe. And then once the transition ended and they both came in, I added another keyframe and I just increased the blur. You can increase it as much as you want. I just did 0.150. And yeah, this is this transition. Don't forget to add on motion blur. I even think adding on some exposure to these right here would look really good. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And yeah, this is the final result. And for this last transition, it is basically kind of like the last transition we just did, except you add on page curl to it. Now you do need to have the premium membership for this one, so that's just a little bit of a full warning. So you're going to want to have your basic photo on the bottom and then your 2 PNGs on top. Now I added a shadow onto mine. This is optional, but I just like the look of it. So on your first PNG, go ahead and add on page curl. Now I made my angle 38 degrees. You can make it whatever you prefer. And then on progress, I keyframed it from about 100% to 0%. And this is the graph I used. I highly recommend this graph just because it looks really good once you're doing it. And it looks a lot smoother than if you just use an out graph. And then on my second PNG, I added on page curl again, but this time I made the angle 114, which I think I'm going to change because I'm not a huge fan of how it looks. So I'm going to change it to 141. And for the progress, I made this one, once again, keyframed it from 100 to 0%, and I just used that same graph that I used last time. Now, my blur is at 0.10, and my radius is at 100. You guys can do any settings that you want for those, just to kind of make it how you want it to look. And even like we did with the last transition, you could add exposure onto these PNGs and they'd look just as good. And yeah, that was it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and comment down below any tutorial requests you guys may have. And yeah, I love you guys. Bye!